Hey guys, it's day 19 and we are almost 2/3 of the way through, and I bet you are doing an amazing job of picking lots of different great things for your disaster backpack, because that disaster backpack is going to be the center of your disaster preparedness, no matter what. So this is the last of the videos for your 5 pockets. So we've talked about physical, we've talked about psychological, we've talked about personal papers, and then we've talked about your phone and your immediate needs in your phone. Now we're going to talk about your long-term needs with your phone, and then after that, we're going to be talking about your loved ones, your pets, your property, your possessions, your priceless things. That'll be all next week. But today I want to talk about long-term needs. Communication is one of the biggest problems in disaster management for disaster professionals, whether they're first responders or whether they're emergency managers like the way I was. I worked for Fortune 500 companies. No matter what, it's that communication mechanism that's such a big deal. So when I talk to you about phones, I want to discuss it a little more metaphorically. But before I do that, I want to say there is one item that if you possibly can add it to your disaster backpack, I highly recommend that you do so. Have a backup phone. You can buy one at one of the stores or use one of your old phones that is still usable. Actually put that in the disaster backpack, because if your phone is destroyed, at least theoretically you can take that phone and you can access it, and you can still be able to make calls if you're able to access the line. If you buy it at a store and you activate it, or if you buy it and don't activate it, for example, in my kit, I have a phone that I haven't activated, but I can, if I ever need to, I can access that phone and I can utilize it right away. There's just a number I have to call on it. And so this one's already charged. All I have to do then is start it, put a little code in, and then immediately I can just type in some information, and then it'll give me access to a phone. So I can call, I can text, I can do a lot of things. I will lose things like my photos and stuff, but it doesn't really matter to me. A lot of that stuff is already backed up in the cloud. So, but if you can get a backup phone, it's so important that you do so, even if all it has is internet access, because then you can just access things on social media. You can communicate through social. You can communicate through online apps. There's phone apps if you don't have a way of being able to dial numbers on the phone. But when I talk metaphorically about phones, what I really mean is communication. And what I want you to do is I would like you to think about investing in some walkie-talkies. Walkie-talkies can be so important because they can allow you to communicate with other members of your family. Sometimes they're short distance, sometimes they're long distance, and ways that you can be able to speak with them immediately. In disasters, there are times where phones don't work. There are times where cell phone towers are not available, and it takes time for cell phone companies to set up emergency towers. They're not like they say on TV. It's not immediate. It does take time for them to do that, and sometimes they don't do it at all because the disaster isn't large enough. Even if it's occurring to other people and it's happening in the community, they may not set it up for hours or even days. So I want you to remember that there needs to be alternate ways of being able to communicate. Because you don't have a written disaster plan, we don't actually write out all these procedures, which I don't think you need to do. If you have a walkie-talkie along with maps and cards and keys, and you have other things available, it's so much easier to be able to communicate where you want to go, what you need to do, and you can do so really rapidly. If you have a family member who's a ham radio operator, so they have really powerful amateur radios. I've been an amateur radio operator for almost 20 years, and in all that time, when I use that emergency radio, I've done it. I've used it in hurricanes. I used it in an earthquake before. These are radios that can be really, really important, because no matter what happens, I can bounce the radio signal off mountains, I can bounce it off of buildings, and I can touch people in other states or even other countries. It's happened many, many times, and it's just a handheld. And so anytime, if you're an amateur radio operator, if you want to get our amateur radio license, keep your amateur radio with your disaster kit. Mine is there as well. If you don't and you just want to keep walkie-talkies, great. They don't cost that much, but it's something that could be so important to be able to communicate with family members, not only in your disaster backpack having one, but having one in someone else's disaster backpack as well that matches is such a great way of being able to keep in touch. Because communication is the critical element in ensuring a smooth and safe disaster response. This is Disaster Patrick, and remember, prepare for a disaster and you'll never experience one.